In 2013, Dataiku was founded with a clear vision: build the unified platform to allow people with a diverse range of skills to work together across the entire lifecycle of an analytics or data science project so that AI can become an everyday reality within their enterprise. The result was the Dataiku platform for everyday AI. Sitting on top of our customers' data environments and connecting to their preferred AI services, Dataiku creates a collaborative workspace for the employees, all while leadership and IT maintain security and freedom of choice to move among technology providers as needed. The platform has 4 key characteristics. It is end-to-end, covering the full lifecycle of data and AI projects. It is designed to be easily used by the entire enterprise, bringing together coders and clickers as well as data and domain experts. It is built on a modular architecture that decouples the insights and models from the underlying data, allowing organizations to future-proof their stacks. And finally, it provides a strong governance framework, allowing oversight for both compliance and business alignment. Dataiku goes to market with 3 distinct offers built on this common platform. Dataiku for data analytics, accelerating how analytics are produced in your organization. Dataiku for AI and machine learning, accelerating the development and deployment of predictive models. And Dataiku for enterprise AI, allowing AI to be embedded throughout the enterprise, including generative AI. This approach has been met with incredible success. Dataiku now has more than 1,000 employees around the world and, in 2023, was named the AI ML Partner of the Year for AWS, Databricks, and Snowflake. Dataiku has more than 600 customers, including more than 10% of the Forbes Global 2000 list, and counts more than $250 million in annual recurring revenue. Those customers are Dataiku's greatest assets and our best storytellers, so let's hear from them.
We were flattered with the Dataiku capabilities, especially the decoupling that it brings.
Dataiku kind of hit many of that checkpoints, from data preparation, the quick to data prep, without involving many of the IT personnel to actually bring that data in.
Dataiku is a very important, if not the backbone of this data mesh infrastructure. It's very much a win-win for both the business users and technology because you basically have your data ops, DevOps, and ML ops all working together in the same environment.
Finding data, prepping data for analytical consumption, visual consumption, predictive modeling, prescriptive modeling. We don't want multiple platforms for each. And if we can have crossover, that would be great for us. And Dataiku sort of has been able to provide us that.
So Dataiku is really leveraging the security mechanisms behind, so we could actually convince InfoSec and security architecture people to have one platform that is really helping with security aspects.
You know, I've got great people at Dataiku making YouTube videos for me to show me how to click around on the screen and do something that like would have taken me hours to figure out. That's the part that's really, really valuable about it.
Dataiku has been a wonderful platform to process effectively that work and manage a direct collaboration between these various teams.
Dataiku has been a breath of fresh air from ease of implementation, ease of usability, and ease of understandability.
That was an excellent intro, though, because it, in some ways, recapitulated not just your current value offering, but the story of your company. Because you start out 10 plus years ago doing analytics largely, and analytics to the cloud. And now it's moving into ML in the cloud and Gen AI in the cloud, which is newer and more visionary. And I think it would be interesting to address the effect of this for the customers, but also the effect of this on running your company and planning your company for the future. Because it was probably pretty linear until about 1.5 years ago. But why don't you speak to that?
Yeah, we've been in this business of AI, I would call it traditional AI now, for 11 years. And so, well, when you start a company as a startup, you don't feel it as linear because you typically try to triple your business at the very beginning. But because it's very small, yeah, of course, it's linear from now. But indeed, it was back 10 years ago, a lot about organization, getting more data-driven, building their first data lakes, and then those data lakes moving to the cloud, unlocking more value along this journey. And I think that in the last 10 years, you've moved from a situation where many organizations were trying to figure out what was their data strategy at large, their big data strategy, to a situation where a majority of organizations have established best practices, have unlocked this data. You've heard in the video this recurring topic of like, can people have access to my data, which is pretty basic, but like it's security. Most of you work in financial services, you know that there are some strings attached to giving data to people. That's what we're talking about, and that's, I think, what most organizations have figured out. And the linearity was about getting additional value out of this data, but building models on top. Like those traditional AI predictive models predict my churn, predict the demand for the number of handbags in China next quarter, like these kind of models. And we have now customers having hundreds of those models in production, running every day, and they are using it to leverage their business. But the linearity is that at the end of the day, you still need, well, humans at the end to actually leverage this information to make things happen, to take a decision and so forth. And you start having this idea that thanks to generative AI, you've got this non-linearity, which is like, oh my God, the last mile, this last mile where there is a human can be replaced by a machine. The machine can send the text messages for Valentine's Day automatically, and like you don't need like 10 copywriters to write all of the variants of text messages. You can have the machine do everything. And so suddenly you can get to the last mile of getting the value out of AI, which is where the non-linearity you talked about happens.
I think that's what I meant by linear. Obviously, the revenue you're attempting to explode, but the analytics proposition began as we can take your existing processes and give them efficiency.
Yep.
We can merge data and give you new insights. Gen AI comes along and it's like, we can create. We can see things that didn't exist before. This comes at a kind of price, which we can get on initially, but where do your customers see value? And how did you have to remake your own company to adjust for generative AI? In terms of training, in terms of staffing, in terms of the value prop you represent?
So our customer find, our customer find value in terms of traditional AI and generative AI along the same lines. At the end of the day, AI can be leveraged throughout the business, and from our perspective, it was a lot about expanding our value proposition towards generative AI. So let me get maybe into the specifics of it. We developed a platform enabling organizations to way more simply leverage their data and build models on top. Would that be regular AI, traditional AI models, or would that be applications leveraging LLMs? And a key aspect of it for us is agnosticity. At the end of the day, we see that there will be different technology you use to store the data, like all of the data warehouses of the world. And most organizations have multiple of them, and it won't get into one data warehouse to serve them all. Like you'll have multiple databases. And similarly, I think you've heard, most of you perhaps, about the announcement of Claude 3 becoming as strong as GPT-4 as of yesterday or the day before. You'll have also a multiplicity of LLMs providers, more or less comparable to one another. And as a company, depending on the task, you'll have to switch from one another, and you make some arbitrage in terms of cost, in terms of regulation, depending on the countries you operate in, and so forth. And so you'll have also to manage this complexity. And so at the end of the day, most organizations will build Legos on top of those technologies, data, LLMs, in order to automate their business, and that's what we're helping with. Make those Legos.
Is it challenging for your people to keep up on the latest GPT and the latest Claude and all the rest of them?
I don't know. I think it's fun, actually. If you think about, if you were into data and data science for a while, like, indeed, at some point it was linear, as in, like, everyone was doing decision trees and random forest and XGBoost and scaling data. And like, yeah, it was working. That was great. But it was a bit boring, honestly.
Okay.
And so suddenly you can get back to finding new stuff. And of course, that the good thing about any kind of LLM kind of application is that they are not working straight away. Like building a churn model for a retailer, yeah, 95% of the time it works. It's boring. Like, it actually works. Automating an agent? No, in the current state of technology, it doesn't work first shot. You have to tune things up. You have to make sure that you don't hallucinate and so forth. So it will be like, it's actually a 5 or 10 years roadmap for most organizations to make it work, and that's actually exciting.
It is very interesting the way ALMs or Gen AI in general represent the most direct communication between a computer and a human.
Yep.
And the AI is reprogramming itself as it interacts. And that's something quite new. And it's almost personalizing itself to the customer in the best case scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. I think that if you even further dig into it, what's interesting is that we lost a little bit with our use of computer, this ability to have context in many of our user experience, user interface. And so back with LLM, you've got this deep personalization, which is, at the end of the day, all about reinventing user experiences. And I also find it super exciting for our own product, as in we've added capabilities so that you can indeed use text, describe what you want to do. I want my data clean in this and that way, instead of any other way around, which is, of course, super exciting.
Now, last week when we spoke, you were at your sales conference in Paris. And I'd like to get a sense of what were some of the most exciting and surprising things for your teams, what you're finding out customers want, where you see this going in the next 12 and 24 months.
I think we've surprised by the speed of adoption of generative AI among our customers. And then how many want to try something, indeed. And indeed, at the end of the day, for our teams, it can be a matter of coping with it. And, well, when you operate a large software organization, you end up indeed having a sales team that needs to adapt, understand what are the capabilities of the platform, what this is about. And so a lot of it was for them to be able to be equipped in terms of helping all of our customers to find out what are the best use cases for generative AI for them.
Mm-hmm. It seems that there are some lingering issues, and you tell me whether they're going to get addressed. And one, well, obviously, the cost and value situation. How well do customers understand what it costs to do this at scale versus the value they're going to realize? Is that still a search, or do you feel like we're well along where that's concerned?
I think we are at the very early innings of generative AI for the enterprise, where people must accept that we are talking about innovation. Meaning you can have the idea of like 20 use cases, and maybe that 15 of them will actually end up being bad ideas or things that don't actually work. But 1 or 2 of them will completely change the way you operate your business. That's the kind of revolution we're talking about.
It's almost a portfolio approach.
It's a portfolio approach where gradually people will iterate and understand what works for them or what not, and they will have to pay the price of this innovation. So one way to think about it is, indeed, as a company, maybe you could actually wait a year, wait for your competitors to figure out what are the best use cases of generative AI, which one is working or not, whether you should do it yourself or get it done by someone else, purchase software on the shelf to do so, meaning it could be a relevant strategy to just wait. But
and
if
then
you
play a lot of catch-up.
Yeah, and you might have to play catch-up with it, because this year or 2 you will spend waiting will be a year that your competitors will have used in order to actually get that done and maybe get this 10 or 20% of additional productivity in their company instead of you a year in advance.
Do the companies have to engage with you or hire internally in a different way? Is there new talent they need to absorb or different types of talent they need to use from your company in order to make this work?
I think that because it's so new in terms of leveraging generative AI, indeed, most companies do require some additional help. Here, we built our product in order for them to become and be self-sufficient in terms of leveraging generative AI at scale. But still, I would argue that compared to what was the changes required in order to implement ML and AI at scale for the enterprise back 10 years ago, well, currently, most companies do have most of the skills inside their company in order to make it work, I think.
Okay. Another issue is hallucinations. How big an issue is this for customers now, and is this a problem that gets solved?
It's not an easy problem to solve for. So one way to think about it, because when we're talking about hallucination from the enterprise perspective, it can be a bit abstract. Like we've all observed hallucination with ChatGPT, but like if you think about it from an enterprise perspective, imagine one process, as in you want to automate some form of financial reporting. As in, like, let's say the brochure you want to send to your customers with a summary of earning goals or something like that. Great. That's a great idea. It could save a lot of money to have it done like 80% by a machine. But like, if you end up having the wrong number, like 32% and 28% is not the same number, obviously.
Yeah.
It's not the same number. And so you don't want this kind of mistakes. Currently, with the state of the art, it's still fairly hard to have a 100% guarantee that you have all of the right numbers. So you might still need to put a human in the loop and so forth if you use generative AI at scale. And so the challenge in the next few years will be to actually build systems enabling to provide these kind of guarantees, where you have like the artifacts, the models of traditional AI that would have been vetted and tested in your company, providing the actual, I don't know, forecast of whatever, and use those raw data to make sure that they ground anything that generative AI is doing in order to make sure that the agent or the output or the content you create has some guarantees of truth. And yeah, and that's actually the challenge. And even if it's not perfect at the end, you want to make sure that there is like fewer errors in the output system compared to, well, the average human.
Yeah, I mean, there are umpteen cases where 100% isn't necessary. One we've seen is, by the way, I'm not speaking for Google Cloud here, but this is a public thing. So money laundering throws up way too many false positives. But generative AI can say, those seem like the most likely. Check those first. And that's just very helpful, you know?
Yeah, and that's a typical situation where traditional AI has been used by many of our customers for years to actually find it out, and where generative AI can potentially further help, indeed.
Well, I think the audience has probably figured out you're a European company.
Oh yeah, why so? By the way, my name is Douetteau, which is very hard to pronounce. Well, especially if you look at it.
Okay.
Too many letters in France. I don't know why. We put letters everywhere.
Maybe you can do something with AI. Talk about the European market and where it stands now vis-a-vis. Is the North American side more aggressive, and is Europe kind of looking at this and judging? Sort of the way companies are watching and waiting. Or do you see interest in European companies? Do you think there's opportunity?
Oh yeah, we definitely see interest in European companies in AI. I think that there was maybe some differences in terms of adoption of the early innings of like the data wave back 10 years ago, where US was definitely 1 or 2 years ahead. But like with use of generative AI, I think it was like so much into every boardroom across the planet that like everyone was on it. Then, well, there is the question of like how much money you put into it, where there will be still perhaps differences in terms of amount of investment being made. But yeah, I think that it's something happening everywhere.
I see we have a few minutes left, and I have more questions, but if there are questions from the audience, I would welcome them. Anybody have anything they wish to state? Okay, well then, let me ask you, I noticed part of the value proposition, and it said this in the video, was that non-specialists can contribute, everyone can contribute. Jensen Huang in video is saying, like, don't bother learning to code, everything's gonna code. Do you think specialty coding is on the way out, or is everyone a coder now, or is the answer yes to both?
That's a great question. I think that indeed coding might be a very, very different specialty 5 or 10 years from now, that the way you code would be different, maybe not with language. But to put that in perspective, when I created the company, my main motivation was that I perceived that in order to make data valuable for the enterprise, there was just not enough data scientists in the world. And that at the end of the day, there is more benefit in terms of having someone coming from their domain, like the domain experts, to become more data-driven, compared to having a data scientist become a domain expert. At least in most serious industries, as in, I don't know, aerospace, chemistry, like very hard for a data scientist to learn being a rocket scientist in 1 or 2 years. Easier for a rocket scientist to actually, especially with the right platform, if they don't need to code, but like just click around to actually understand how to use data, because they are rocket scientists. And so same applies to lots of domains. And I think that the no-code movement is something that started 10, 15 years ago, that is now with generative AI reaching a state where indeed it would be the most prevalent way to actually create things with computers.
And, well, one of the themes of this conference is the next 10 years. I don't know how much you think about your company in 10 years, but I would ask you sort of 2 and 5 and maybe 10. How do you see this changing your business? And what do you think will be the most defensible parts, the biggest differentiators of your business in this world?
I think the way I think about especially the generative AI ecosystem today is that we've got a false perception that building large language models is important, because there is this kind of like arm race towards having the biggest models between 3, 4, 5 companies. I think that fast forward, and also the cost of GPUs is so high that indeed you need to, I don't know, throw 15 million at it in order just to try. So it's indeed like an arm race right now. If you think about it 2 or 3 years from now, my prediction is that for enterprise application, I'm not talking about like making Hollywood movies, I'm talking about like customer support kind of use cases, like very basic. You could use commodity models, you would have like 10, 20 of them on the planet, some of them will be open source, and so the value will not be in the models themselves, it will be about like, oh, you orchestrate things on top. And I think that's what we want to focus on, and the defensible position we are building on the market. And why? Because then the differentiator becomes, oh, you integrate your own data, your own business rules, or you make sure that this thing is like fully governed, meaning can you ensure compliance from a EU, US, India, Japan AI Act perspective, which would be, I think, a big thing for companies. Like, we'll all get crazy through regulations, especially when they will actually get implemented. We are already half crazy where they are just piece of papers. So I think all of that, managing this complexity, is a kind of defensible position we want to build on the market.
Right, and you've offered this LLM mesh. Is that an example of moving into that area?
Yeah, exactly. Here the idea is that, so in this data world, you've got for a while this idea of data mesh, which is like, hey, you need to think about your data, not just about having everything in the same database, but like virtually, you've got data everywhere. It's all about documenting it and so forth. And so similarly, we push this idea and implementation of LLM mesh, which is like this ability to secure and switch from one LLM to the other and secure them consistently in terms of privacy, in terms of understanding their cost, in terms of making sure that you don't create toxic content out of it. Because those constraints, security, cost control, privacy, is what matters for the enterprise at the end. It's less sexy than multimodality on GPT-5, but I think that is what matters for the enterprise in the next 2 years at least.
Oh yeah, I mean security is a subset of the larger issue, which is having a sense of control over your environment, particularly when there's a new technology that's a little spooky.
Yeah.
So to the extent you can offer observability and security and control, you've got some value.
Exactly. At the end of the day, when you deploy a generative AI application in an enterprise, the question number one is, will it leak information internally? Like, question number one.
Right. Okay, Florian, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much.
Thank you.